impossible, but I'm still alive.
That's the spirit.
God bless him.
You gotta let your imagination run wild.
Once we got here, we realized we could kick it into another space.
The movie looks unlike anything that people have seen.
I love the kind of noir feel of it, and it seemed like a real challenge.
If I want something, I'll just take it.
It was like this really great, sexy film noir, but really edgy and fun.
It is a love story. Love of adventure and New York City and beautiful women.
Hands behind your head.
You sure about that? I really loved Sin City, and I was really taken by 300. I was like, oh, this dude's got something going on.
Something's going down, could be octopus big.
When Frank Miller calls you up and says, you want to do a movie, here's a man who's a master in another visual medium, and you want to see what he can do.
We are to take Frank's artwork and bring Central City to life. We have to do the next evolution of this comic book movie.
Green props, green floors, and green everything.
This is fun.
I was like, oh man, hey, I believe in your vision, so anything I can do to expand on that, let's do it.
You're not making this easy.
And they're going to get romance and adventure. They're also going to get a very different looking kind of movie that I think is taking the digital approach a step further. Imagine your job being to look at a blank page, know that whatever you put on it was there to tell a story in words and pictures. And suppose just by accident you're a genius and you have to crank out 7 pages a week. Well, there you've got Will Eisner.
He definitely is one of the originators. He created so many of the conventions of comics.
His spirit was a newspaper section that was the work of a young man with a virtually free license to do whatever he wanted.
Will Eisner introduced cinematic techniques to comic book pages. He became the director and the lighting designer. He brought in new angles and perspectives, lighting like we had never seen in comics before. Nobody saw this stuff in comics before. Nobody.
Will Eisner was a real mentor to Frank.
They had very different perspectives, but they loved each other, and they would clash in so many different ideas.
I think they both admired each other because they were both amazing, unique talents.
There's no way I could imagine doing the work I do without having had him as a teacher.
The history of the spirit as a comic book is extraordinary, and then when you layer on that, having Frank Miller direct it and write it, it's an extraordinary opportunity.
I've been a Frank Miller geek for a very long time. Through Dark Knight and the Sin City series and the 300 and everything else.
He is an amazing writer himself. Action! And another revolutionizer of comics.
Biggest lesson I learned from Will was that the story was the most important part of any entertainment form. That without it, you really had nothing else, and all these dazzling angles and beautifully drawn characters sprang from a central sense of story. Spirit is a fascinating character, mainly because it was written without question for adults, and was never really a kiddie comic.
Damn, I've got no time for this. My city screams. She needs me. Spirit is sort of in every man. Not right now. I'm kind of busy.
99% of this guy is just a regular guy on the street. Anybody could be him.
Will Eisner wanted to create something that was about a hero of the city, a hero of a neighborhood, not somebody like Superman or Captain Marvel or Wonder Woman out to save the world.
When his editor said, "Where's his costume?" he whipped out his brush and put a mask on him, and so we ended up with the Spirit.
Marry me?
Just doing my job, sir.
We know that he is actually Denny Colt.
All my life, all I wanted to be was a good cop, but that's all changed. Denny Colt was a cop who was shot dead and mysteriously came back to life and now has unusual powers of healing.
You're a mess. 3 bullets across the deltoid
They went
chest.
straight through me. Hardly took any meat.
Sans Serif is the childhood sweetheart of the Spirit.
This I keep as a souvenir. The rest goes to the man who can get a message to the octopus. She loves shiny things, as she calls them, and she loves diamonds.
Sans Serif. She broke his heart, and I think in response, he's just been sort of a player.
You're in love with every woman you meet.
Come on, son. You can't take your eyes off the ladies.
Mon amour, He's a superhero. Every woman has to fall in love with him.
Enough of this frog talk! I don't understand it. Paris, give me his toes.
The octopus is Spirit's nemesis.
There is nothing I like better than kicking your ass all night long. Except maybe eggs.
As the Spirit brings order to the world, the octopus brings chaos.
Will Eisner had a great sense of humor. There is evil and there's danger, but there's also an element of comedy.
His characters were colorful, they were textured, they were layered. His villains, his villainesses,
Who the hell are you?
were the greatest group of femme fatales ever created in the comics.
You are a common criminal.
There's nothing common about me. You followed the breadcrumbs right to us.
At the time when people were really putting women in that kind of domestic box, Will was writing these female characters that were real femme fatales and giving them a lot of power over Spirit.
It was really revolutionary for comic books at that time.
Is every woman in this hellhole out of her goddamn mind?
No, sir. We're just equipped.
Will's work will always endure. The character was reckless, but so is the artist. So what I want to do more than anything in this movie is get back in touch with that sense of experimentation that he brought to the Spirit. There's a curious kind of double-sided coin work with digital. As much as it speaks of the future, it also can bring back some values of the past. Not just the comic book values of the strange-looking city and the wild lighting, but also the values of classic noir.
In essence, every shot in the film is a special effect because we are compositing backgrounds into almost every shot.
The inspiration I took from what Frank said to me about Eisner's attention to detail is that I didn't have to build a complete city. You know, I didn't have to build a city where I could turn around every nook and cranny and see something new, but instead that I could express a lot about what this whole city is about with one small detail.
When everything seems possible, that's exactly when you've got to bring out your inner fascist and say, okay, I can do this, but I won't. And pick exactly what will achieve your goals.
Film is all about minimalism. It's all about taking things away. Film isn't about adding, it's about subtracting.
There's silhouetted people in silhouetted backgrounds, or they're edge-lit people in sketchy backgrounds. You're trying to draw your eye to the main event and suggest the world beyond. Same way Frank suggests everything.
Thank you, sir.
Half of what Bill is doing on this movie with lighting is taking light away, not adding it. The same thing's true with Frank. He draws a beautifully detailed pencil sketch and then proceeds to get out his black ink and cover over 97% of it with black. And yet the fact that there was a drawing underneath there means that the silhouette that is left is informed by all these little details that had to be there in order for the thing to work, but are now just implied rather than directly expressed.
So there's a lot of areas where a wall might fall off completely black, but we never let anything be completely black. A matte painter will actually paint full detail brick under there, and we bring it down because it's amazing when you get it on the film, that subtle variation in the blacks can actually show up, and the viewer can tell that it's ink. We call it inked out. So it's never okay to have something solid black. It's always good to have some detail there in the shadows, even if it's barely perceptible.
My city, she's always there for me.
There are some amazing voiceover sequences where the Spirit kind of expresses his love letter to the city. Luckily for me, those were some of the very first sequences that the orphanage pre-visualized. Frank had storyboarded out a sequence called On My Way.
First I draw it the way I saw it, and then I draw it the way I thought Will would see it. I always go with Will's version.
He's basically expanded on Eisner's drawings and really put sort of his Frank Miller touch on it, which is, you know, a much darker, more violent, more, you know, raw version.
Frank did some drawings, some pen and ink, and they show a level of stylization that we built upon.
He just knows the smallest amount of information you need in order to successfully tell the story. And that's this kind of visual minimalism that I think is the reason that everyone always suspected that Frank Miller's artwork was so cinematic, even though they didn't really understand how to bring it to the screen, really, probably until Sin City.
Sin City was like the 300-pound gorilla in the room with us, and so what do you do with it? So basically what we decided to do was go further, make it even more extreme, more in line with his drawings than even Rodriguez did. I wasn't attracted to this movie to do something explicable. I wanted to see how inexplicable one can be and still evoke feelings and involve the audience. How far can you go?
You're with the gun as you were before.
He draws his own boards, and you get in and you see everything, and you realize, wow, this guy's really got it all in his head. It's pretty unbelievable. And then we shoot what he draws.
What I told Bill and Stu and everybody else early on was that I don't solve problems, I create them. And so I would just come up with images that I wanted. And it was up to these wizards to make them happen. So I was a kid in a candy store.
We've always been telling comic stories, but we've never actually been able to show the art in the way we are able to now.
If this is the wrong box, I'll kill you myself.
And that's one of the great reasons for using the whole green screen technique, because by marrying art with the actual live action, we will get the experience as a comic fan that we got reading the books.
It's the kind of thing where it really gets you excited as a performer and excited for this whole new generation and this whole new wave of filmmaking.
They knew it was going to be a green screen movie, but how green it was going to be, that was, that was up for grabs. Will we build any sets?
I was really nervous coming in because I've never really worked in a full-on green screen.
They have me running down the street, killing, Samuel L. Jackson, shooting him. And when I got here, nobody's here.
Honey, I'm just an author cocker. You gotta give me something to work with here.
You're a mess. 3 bullets across the deltoid of
They
your
went
chest.
straight through me. Hardly took any meat.
This is very hard in a movie when it's the entire room you're walking into, it's a green box, and there's nothing in the room to indicate the space you are in.
This is more about the actor, not about, because you don't see anything, just green.
The main thing that I've learned from the other side of the camera is that you're very alone when you act. And you need constant orientation.
Okay, we want one more. Hold it away as you swing.
Part of my job is to kind of sell that green screen to everybody, to just kind of remind everybody, that's going to be awesome later, and hopefully they trust me.
I'll be seeing you again right soon.
You're giving me a real headache, Octopus.
The green screen, if anything, seemed to have a liberating effect. It was almost like working in black box theater.
But in another way, it does require them to really extend themselves. They're really creating the reality at that point.
I'm sort of a veteran of the big green room because I did 3 Star Wars movies, so I kind of don't worry about there not being anything there.
It's gonna get worse before it gets better, pretty boy. Yeah.
I let my imagination run and do the things that I need to do to create a reality of my own that they can draw around and do things to.
You're not making this easy.
I've got a star in the head, an arrow in the chest, machine gun 10 times, run over by a truck. I mean, it goes on. Every day I come in, it's a new Frank's like, we're gonna kill you this way. I'm like, okay.
When I was reading the script, there's a ton of underwater stuff for my character, and I don't know how to swim.
Oh, I like that a lot. I like that a lot.
Everything looks like you're underwater even when you're above water.
So I was reading the script and I'm like, how do I tell these people I don't know how to swim? So I was real casual. I was like, so about the swimming stuff, like, is it gonna be like a huge tank, like Titanic, like how they shot Titanic, She's like, no, it's gonna be there's gonna be no water. You're gonna be in a harness and there's not gonna be any water at all. I'm like, no water? So I got away with that one.
I know that some actors that I know get frustrated with green screen, but I just see it as I'm like, 5 years old again, and I'm like out in the backyard making things up in my head.
It feels like theater to me, or like class, like acting class, where you can kind of be free to like try out anything.
It was a lot better than I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be really scary.
On this set, it's like you're in a sandbox playing around with other people.
Central City and the spirit and the women and the villains really do prove a theory of mine that the best comic book art involves an artist drawing the stuff that he loves to draw the most. If you picture New York between Bank Street and Houston Street, take the parts of each decade where the city showed its personality the best, you've got Central City.
Do you know where you are?
Sure.
What city?
Central City, USA.
What year is it?
This year.
If you're looking for any particular thing, you just go back through history and you find the one that looked the coolest and you use that one. So we've got people talking on cell phones and then getting into a police car from the 50s.
It's got elements of the 40s, but it's a modern world. It is what we call contemporary noir.
What Stu and his company have created is the Central City of my dreams.
We've got literally exactly one of Eisner's, signature splash pages with the sewer grate and all the interesting trash pouring into it.
I really wanted the best grate that anybody had ever seen, and because it was an Eisner trademark.
So you pick and choose bits and pieces of a real city so that it has that kind of tangible reality and messiness that a real urban environment does.
This is a shot that incorporates a number of different elements. We have a plate, and then we have a matte painting plate. We have a 3D snow element, then we have a CG truck, and a element that was shot on our little snow table of me pushing a little spoon with a piece of cardboard on it through baking soda to get this element for the front. All those elements all come together into this shot.
And what you wind up with is Central City.
We always look for heightened reality in this kind of a film because a comic, you want the comic fans to really enjoy the movie, and sometimes just simply filming a story that comes from a comic isn't enough. You want to give it that look, that style.
When you're working on a stylized movie like this, the color correction has such an important role to play in the final look of the film.
We sort of worked our way into colors, knowing that you want to be noirish, black and white is your goal.
I never even want to see you again. I hate you, Stan.
So the color is used to show an emotional truth in each scene. And most abruptly and plainly when the reborn Denny Colt is walking against the gigantic red sun. The red is there to represent his anger. So is a rather amazing scarlet on his tie.
There are flashes of color, the red tie, and in the color correction at the end of the day, they'll be able to manipulate how much color they want in the piece.
In other places with sand, for instance, she has a very gold motif throughout her that Bill Pope came up with.
I knew that they were opening a locket. It occurred to me that the locket could be gold, the memory could be a golden memory. So we played with that, we massaged it a little bit, so that's why the flashbacks to sand are gold.
Color tends to be sometimes an afterthought in a show. I've seen many artists get really bummed out when the shot that they've been preserving all these details in to get to the show and they realize that it's all been crushed down or all been blown out, and it really, really helps to have that final sort of look while you're working on the shot.
And I think as a testament to Bill's precision and artistry, we are making very few adjustments to that now in the final stages of it.
And now Stu and I are working intensely to carry this through on the whole thing so that it doesn't feel like a primary color comic book, but the color has an emotional punch at every turn.
Rather than a big action.
Bill and Stu are terrific partners. It's like, we're 3 points in a triangle.
Almost invariably, if anyone had a question for me about what something should look like, the answer was sitting there on the comic book page. And that's true for us with Frank's storyboards, but it's even, I think, more true with Eisner's artwork.
The big question that comes up is, are you being faithful enough? Are you showing enough respect? If people want a big, dusty old monument, probably the first obstacle they'd have to erecting it would be that Eisner would rise from the grave and prevent it from ever going up. He didn't believe in standing still. If I did a quaint movie set in the 1940s of the spirit, I would definitely lose the next argument I had with him, and it wouldn't be pretty.
It's absolutely one of the most creative processes I've ever been through, and I hope I get to work with Frank 100 more times. Silk and Floss is the most beautiful woman ever.
It's just fun to be able to do a full-on fantasy, and everybody looks super cool.
It's been really creative, and I've gotten to live out certain fantasies on this movie that I haven't gotten to live out before. at least die bravely. Rodent.
I think it's fun.
You want to help? Find me a lead to the octopus.
The great thing about working with Frank is that he comes to every scene and he says, oh my God, this is gonna be a really cool scene. His excitement is like a little kid.
It's a fun place to be, you know, it's kind of an actor's playground.
Action!
I'm looking forward to seeing how what we did here connects to what he has in his mind.
I feel like breaking all kinds of rules. But I have no idea what to expect, which is exciting and totally terrifying. Keep the mask on. Something tells me it might be better that way.
What Bill and Frank are doing is really trying to capture what Eisner did early on.
I think Frank hears Will in his head on a regular basis.
We have really gotten something beyond my wildest dreams.
I know how much love he's poured into this, and I'm just so excited for the world to see what it is that Frank Miller can do.
Working in movies is more than anything just convinced me that I love nothing more than storytelling. And, you know, as long as there's a way to tell one, I will. And if I've got to tell it around a campfire, I will.
She is my city. And I am her spirit.
I think the crudest possible way to put how I've organized my career is I've been led by my dick. I started drawing when I was a very, very young child. I presented my mother with a pile of typewriter paper that had been folded over, covered with drawings, saying, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life, when I was 6 years old. Drawing has always been part of who I am. And New York has always been an inspiration, even though I was a country kid. And I always knew this would be my home. And I couldn't wait to draw it for real. When I first moved here, I couldn't afford to go to the movies. I couldn't afford a lot of things. So I would go up to the top of the Empire State Building, and they had no screens up. So I could actually sit on the edge of the Empire State Building and draw. Then I would go out to South Street Seaport, and I would draw again. And it all represented a breathing, living city. The city is a very vertical place. And as a cartoonist, you tend more to play with vertical shapes. The water tanks and everything are resting on very high spaces. And people live on top of each other in womb-like environments. So the city lends itself to long brush strokes, whereas the country or mythical lands tend to be much more horizontal. That's why when I did 300, for instance, I went for a horizontal format. And I knew that spectacle is something that you experience as a human being this way, whereas the city is something you tend to experience this way. I've devoted a lot of my career to capturing it because it is alive. Every inch of it's alive. Let's get back to Max Gaines. He created the half tab, as it's called, the half tabloid, half the size of the New York Post. He folded a newspaper in half twice and said, I think we got something. And that became the format of the comic book. Now, it adapted over the years through strange printing changes to the bizarre form it is now. It's actually 3 inches shorter than it should be. And nobody knows why, except that the racks were built that size. That's how dumb the world of comics is. So much could be done if we just knock all those goddamn racks and boxes down and do whatever we wanted to. The 50s had taken their toll on comic books. Everybody took too seriously the rash of censorship. And also, comics were beaten down economically. They weren't selling. Comics were, the time I entered the field, considered strictly child's play. Creatively, they turned around at Marvel Comics first. You wake up one morning, and your mom wonders why you're a little moody. And it turns out there's these things going through your veins that are called hormones. And they make your fantasies a little more violent, and they make you look at girls a little differently. And so your fantasies change. Jack Kirby owned that era. He owns that moment in any man's life. And what Stan and Jack did on the Fantastic Four and the Avengers and all Captain America, all those other titles, is really astonishing comic books, and it's some of the best I've ever done. Jack Kirby just explodes with adolescent power. They were an explosion of imagination. They were everything I wanted out of drawing. It wasn't until Will Eisner that I went into a much more nuanced
tus trailers. Visita mi canal.
Human look toward things. Several things kept us alive through this period. One was the underground comics, mostly known for the work of Robert Crumb and Richard Corbin. And then the guys in the mainstream, what we call the mainstream, the guys who did the X-Men and Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., like Neil Adams and Jim Steranko. It was only when my generation came into play that we started waking everybody up again. While Neil Adams, coming from advertising, brought a photographic reality to comics. And so his anatomy was just utterly beautiful to behold. The first time I ever saw Neil Adams draw the Angel, the X-Men character, and actually saw wings drawn like wings, it was breathtaking. And Neil Adams brought a photorealism to comics that they'd never seen before, and instantly outdated everything before him. Jim Steranko brought a pop culture sensibility. He brought references that from the pulps and from just uncanny sources. Everything that was going on in pop culture, Jim Steranko brought to the fore. The outburst of the independent publishers, like Dean Mulaney and Dennis Kitchen. A whole new kinds of comics were becoming available. But the rest of us had to keep going in different ways. I mean, I came to New York just really hoping I could make my living doing comic books. I just wanted to tell cool stories about Spider-Man and Daredevil and stuff like that. I didn't have aspirations. I just wanted to do this for a living because drawing was in my blood. I was doing Daredevil when I went to my editor and said that my character who I created, Elektra, had to die. And my editor, Denny O'Neil, said, they'll never go for it. She's more popular than the title character. And I said, well, Jim Shooter's right down the hall. Let me talk to him. And I went into Jim Shooter's office, and all 7 feet of Jim Shooter was sitting there, looking very severe. And I said, Jim, I gotta kill Elektra. And he lowered his head, and then he looked back up and he said, tell me a story, Frank. And I told him exactly what I planned to do, and he said, it's great, do it. I had a powerful ally at the top of the company. The old fart came back with a contract with God. What he did was he said, this is where we can go, as something that is not temporary, as something that stays on the shelf, stays alive for generations to come. Once I really absorbed it, and I gained enough power in the industry, I started working on my series Ronin as an answer to contract with God. And I took in influences from France and Japan and everywhere else to create a reckless piece of work that I'm still very proud of, because you can watch the handcuffs come off me. The notion of authorship really was born with a contract with God. And for me, it was with Ronin. And then I looked to apply it to the old standard heroes with Batman when I did The Dark Knight Returns. Because I wanted to create things that would last. They were still stuck on the yellow circle on his chest and so on. And then came up with an excuse dramatically for him to lose his costume, so that he showed up with just a big old bat on his chest, which he's worn ever since. So, yeah, part of what I did was trickery, part of it was having allies in very high places. It's the time I totally internalized the idea that you can throw the pamphlet over your shoulder and say goodbye. And that if your story is 200 pages long, that's great. If it's 148 pages long, that's great. If it's 500 pages long, who cares? It's your story. It was really, for me, the introduction of the sensibility of a novelist rather than a pamphleteer. When Dark Knight came out, when Watchmen came out, people went, wow, this is really scary. This isn't like the world of Superman anymore. Now you walk into a comic shop and you see 70 years of history, whereas before you saw 3 weeks of history. Things have changed now because Eisner stuck his sword in the sand and the rest of us followed up. I liked black and white crime movies when I was growing up, and I love black and white crime movies now. First off, in black and white, they were able to cut to the heart of the story. Second, how they used film to tell stories in a way that didn't flood you with color, that in fact didn't use it at all, or with detail. Where a 30-foot room could include only a desk and a lamp and a guy, and you believe it. The thing that people miss is that they went to the heart of darkness, just like Dashiell Hammett did, just like Raymond Chandler did. It crawled inside your skull and showed us all how evil we could be. And then our rare moments of heroism become more celebrated. That's all Sin City's about. It's Jim Thompson's world. It's not Steven Spielberg's world. It's a world where we are driven by ugly impulses and we do good things rarely. And we are defined by them. I remember when I started Sin City, I realized I had to finally figure out how to draw cars. And so I bought tons of little cars from like the Franklin Mint and so on. Learning from Jeff Darrow, the artist of Hardboiled, I realized that the best kind of props were three-dimensional. He taught me that if you want to draw a gun, get one. There's lots of fake guns that don't actually fire bullets. One of the things that I feel that's amazing about working in cinema is that there are so few limitations that it becomes dangerous. Working in digital process, for instance, you can do anything, so you have to watch yourself and not do too much. Whereas in comic books, you're limited by the page, because the page becomes a statement of itself. Its juxtaposition of pictures and so on is finite. And where a cartoonist's worst enemy is time, because any comic book can be read very quickly. If you know how to slow the reader down, you've mastered the art of comics. Whereas in film, you have absolute command over time. I mean, the viewer has to sit there and watch unless they're going to leave the theater. My way is to lay out everything in advance and then to come in and play with it. Will Eisner put it best. He said it, he said it best. He said inking is sexy. Because when you bring the brush around, for instance, the shape of a woman, it's as if you're running your hand across it. Drawing is more architectural. You're putting things together. I'm not speaking for Will here, I'm speaking for myself. But inking, he would agree, is more where you feel the window, and you feel the woman's breast, and you feel all the other glorious things that manifest themselves so deliciously in spirit. What Will Eisner taught me was that you could show what decade you were in, what room you were in, and who you were surrounded by with the corner of a table, with a banister or a lamp. I would do it now if I wanted to say somebody was in, say, Los Angeles. I'd do it with a pile of blackberries. It's the same thinking. It's giving you just enough evidence. That is where the job gets harder and more rewarding. I believe that work explodes. A lot of the best stuff that I do is when I'm snapping a brush full of white paint over my wrist and something just splatters all over somebody's face. And matter of fact, I really don't believe in mistakes anymore. I believe that there's nothing but instance. I want to see things go completely wild, and I want to be part of it. I think chaos is a beautiful thing. Allowing entropy to take its course and then to guide it and to control it as an artist. It's what a potter does. It's what a bricklayer does. It's what a painter does. It's what we all really do. I think the graphic novel is a very pretentious term to describe something that has no good name. I've always been part of pop culture. That's what I enjoy. That's what I enjoy producing. I see nothing demeaning in it. I don't think that a smaller audience is a sign of virtue. Comics are a young form, so is film, so is the novel. If you flip back the pages of history, all these forms are young. Guys like David Lapham and James Sochalka and some of the other guys who are coming up right now, it's just starting to explode. Look at how hungry Hollywood is for comic book ideas right now. And most obviously in Iron Man and Batman and so on, but also in things like the Harvey P. Carr's work. It's all changing. We are now standing shoulder to shoulder as sister art forms with film and with literature. I mean, I don't think that there's a big future for, say, the oral heroic poem a la Homer. I think the Nickelodeon's pretty much finished. But comics are just getting started.